My brother called me a worthless parasite while holding out his hand for a check that did not have his name on it. 10 minutes earlier, our grandfather had handed me $100,000 for my 35th birthday and said it was for every day I showed up when nobody else did. Then Brenner locked me in Grandpa's study, kicked me hard enough to steal my breath, and told me he would call 911 if I walked out with what was mine. But he made one mistake. He did not know I still had the original check. When I took it straight to the bank, the manager looked at the screen and went pale because that same check had already been deposited. I used to think keeping peace meant staying quiet when family crossed the line, but that night taught me something different. Silence does not protect a family when someone is using it as a hiding place. Sometimes the truth is the only thing left with any mercy in it. Before we begin, tell us where you're listening from and what time it is there. And if your own family has ever made you feel guilty for standing up for yourself, stay with me. Because what my brother stole that night was not just money. It was my name, my future, and the truth our family had buried for years. My brother's shoe hit my stomach before I had even folded the birthday check back into its envelope. That is the part people always ask me to repeat, like maybe they misheard it the first time, but they did not. 10 minutes before that, I had been standing in my grandfather's dining room in Germantown, Tennessee, holding the largest gift anyone had ever given me. I turned 35 that afternoon under the smell of coffee, lemon pie, old wood, and sawdust drifting in from Grandpa Orson's garage. That house had always smelled like work to me. Not fancy work, real work. Sanded railings, oil-stained tools, floorboards that creaked in the same places every year. I came in wearing a clean shirt, but my hands still had faint marks from a cabinet I had been refinishing that morning. That was my life. Furniture restoration, small repair jobs, doors that would not hang straight, porch steps that needed saving before winter. I was not broke, but I was not impressive either. At least not to my family. My older brother, Brenner Voss, arrived in polished shoes and a jacket that looked like it belonged in a real estate ad. He had that smooth voice people trusted before they checked the paperwork. My mother, Lenora, fussed over him like he had just stepped off a stage. "Brenner, you look so tired," she said. "You work too hard." Then she turned to me and smiled the careful smile she used when she wanted to be kind but still disappointed. "Calloway, honey, you made it on time." That was our family in one sentence. I was the youngest son, the one who had been divorced, the one who worked with his hands, the one people described as still figuring things out. Even though I had paid my bills, kept my head down, and shown up for Grandpa more times than anybody counted, or so I thought. Grandpa counted. Before we gathered around the dining table, he noticed me wiping my palms on my jeans. He pulled a navy handkerchief from his shirt pocket and handed it to me. "You always get nervous when people finally notice you," he said. I gave a small laugh because that was easier than admitting he was right. "I'm fine, Grandpa." "Then keep it anyway." So I did. I folded it once and slipped it into my pocket, not knowing it would become the one small thing I would reach for when the whole room turned against me later. After the pie was cut but before anyone had started eating, Grandpa tapped his fork against his glass. The room quieted. He was 79, but when Orson Whitlock wanted attention, people still gave it to him. He handed me a plain white envelope. I expected a card, maybe a check for a few $100s, which would already have been generous. I opened it carefully, mostly because Grandpa was watching. The check inside was made out to me. Calloway Ingram, $100,000. For a moment, I did not understand what my eyes were seeing. I read the amount again, slower this time, as if the zeros might rearrange themselves into something reasonable. My first feeling was not joy. It was fear. In my family, anything good given to me usually became something I had to defend. Grandpa looked around the table and spoke clearly. "This is not just for your birthday. It is for every day you showed up when nobody else did." No one laughed then. They all knew what he meant. I had fixed the back steps after his fall. I had driven him to cardiology appointments before sunrise. I had slept in a hospital chair when his blood pressure dropped, and everyone else had work the next morning. I never made speeches about it. I never posted pictures online. I just did what needed doing. For once, somebody said it out loud. That should have been a clean moment. Then I saw Brenner's face. He was smiling, but his eyes stayed on the check. Not on Grandpa, not on me, on the check. "That is a big gift," he said, his voice easy and polished, for a man still getting his life together. My mother gave a nervous little laugh. "Oh, Brenner, don't start." But she did not correct him. That was how it usually worked. Brenner cut. Mom softened the blade. I was expected to pretend it did not hurt. I folded the check back into the envelope and held it in both hands. I wanted one birthday that did not turn into a reminder of my place. One memory my brother could not twist into something ugly. But Brenner never struck first with anger. He smiled first. People began drifting toward the kitchen for coffee. Grandpa was talking to my cousin near the window. Mom was moving plates from the counter. I stepped aside, still trying to breathe through the sighs of what Grandpa had done. Brenner came close enough that only I could hear him. "Let me hold that for you." I looked at his hand, then at his face. "No," I said. "Grandpa gave it to me." His smile did not leave, but his eyes went flat. Some families do not need shouting to make you feel small. Sometimes all it takes is one polite sentence, said in the right room, by the person everyone believes first. Brenner leaned closer. "You're going to embarrass yourself with that money." I kept my voice low. "I'm not discussing this here." "Then come to the study." I said no. His jaw tightened just enough for me to see the man behind the good suit. "Don't make me ask twice, Calloway." That was the first time I saw the man behind my brother's smile, and 10 minutes later, he locked the study door behind me. I should have walked straight back to Grandpa and put the envelope in his hands. That would have been the cleanest choice, but families train you in small ways. They teach you to lower your voice, step aside, smooth things over, and keep old patterns alive, because nobody wants trouble during dessert. So when Brenner moved toward the hallway and said, "Don't make this ugly," part of me still followed. Not because I trusted him, because I had spent most of my life trying to keep him from exploding. The study was just off the main hall, behind a heavy oak door Grandpa had refinished himself. Inside, the room smelled like paper pipe tobacco from decades ago, and the furniture polish he used on Sundays. His old contractor license hung on the wall beside a faded photo of him standing in front of his first work truck. Brenner stepped in behind me. The click of the lock sounded small. It changed everything. I turned around, unlocked the door. He ignored that. His face had gone tight. The smooth brother from the dining room stripped away like cheap paint. "Give me that check, you worthless parasite." The words did not shock me because they were new. They shocked me because he finally said them plain. Usually, it was dressed up. "You need direction. You are not practical. You always need help." This time, he did not bother wrapping the blade. I held the envelope against my side. "Grandpa gave it to me." "Grandpa is old," Brenner said. "He gets sentimental. A check like that needs to be handled by someone responsible." Responsible. That word landed exactly where he meant it to. Mom had used it on him for years, like a crown. Brenner was responsible. Brenner understood money. Brenner had a career. Brenner knew how the world worked. I was the youngest son who fixed loose steps and refinished dining tables. "Your name is not on this check," I said. His expression hardened. "Do not talk to me like I am some stranger." "Then stop acting like one." He moved closer. "You will waste it. You will put it into some little hobby shop and burn through it in a year. Meanwhile, this family has real problems." "What problems?" He looked away too quickly. That was the first crack. I did not understand it yet, but I saw it. Brenner was not only angry, he was scared. I tried to step around him. "We can talk when Grandpa's in the room." He grabbed my arm. Not hard enough to leave a mark right away, but hard enough to remind me that the door was locked and the family was still laughing in the kitchen. I pulled back. He reached for the envelope. I turned my shoulder and tucked it under my arm. Then he kicked me, not like two brothers shoving each other around. Not like anger getting away from him for half a second. It was direct and ugly and meant to make me fold. The air left my body. I hit the edge of Grandpa's desk and bent forward, one hand on the wood, the other still clamped around the envelope. Brenner leaned close, breathing fast now. "You walk out with that check, and I call 911, he said. "I will tell them you attacked me. I will tell them you came at me. Because Grandpa would not give you more. I forced myself not to answer too fast. That was what he wanted. A shout, a shove, a broken lamp, anything he could point to when someone opened the door. He went on, quieter. People already know you have problems, Calloway. The divorce, the money, the temper. I do not have a temper. No, he said. But people will believe you do before they believe me desperate. That sentence told me more than he meant to. Brenner was counting on history, not facts, not truth, history. The version of me he had helped build year after year until it was easier for everyone to accept than question. My stomach hurt so badly I could barely stand straight, but my mind cleared in a way it never had during our arguments. He was not losing control. He was trying to make me lose mine. Behind him, Grandpa's framed license caught my eye. I remembered him teaching me to cut stair railings when I was 16. Measure twice, cut once. Do not rush just because your hands are shaking. So, I stopped arguing. Brenner mistook my silence for surrender. He reached again. I shifted the chair with my knee, just enough to put wood and space between us. While he moved around it, I turned the lock with one shaking hand and pulled the door open. He grabbed for my sleeve, but I slipped into the hall. The noise from the kitchen came back all at once. Plates, coffee cups, my mother asking somebody if they wanted whipped cream. Normal sounds from a family that had no idea something had cracked open 20 feet away. Or maybe they did not want to know. I did not stop to explain. I did not look for Mom. I did not ask Grandpa to choose sides in his own hallway. Not yet. I walked out the front door with my hand pressed to my stomach and the envelope tucked inside my jacket. By the time I reached my truck, the evening light had gone soft over the driveway. I sat behind the wheel, locked the doors, and leaned forward until the pain eased enough for me to breathe. The check rested on the passenger seat. A few minutes earlier, it had been a gift. Now it felt like evidence. I did not drive to my mother, and I did not drive home. I drove straight to the bank because something in Brenner's panic told me the check was not the only thing he was trying to steal. The drive to the bank took less than 15 minutes, but it felt longer because every red light gave me time to think. My stomach throbbed where Brenner had kicked me. I kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other near the envelope on the passenger seat, as if the paper might disappear if I stopped watching it. A little smear of frosting was still on my sleeve from the birthday cake I never got to eat. That detail bothered me more than it should have. One minute, I had been standing in Grandpa's dining room while my family talked over coffee. The next, I was parking outside Germantown Community Bank with a check for $100,000 and a pain under my ribs that made it hard to sit straight. The lobby was quiet when I walked in. A woman at the teller window looked up and smiled the way bank employees do when they are trained to make ordinary days feel safe. "Can I help you?" "I need to deposit this," I said. My voice sounded calm enough. I was proud of that. She glanced at the envelope, then at my face. Maybe I looked worse than I thought, because her smile faded just a little. She asked me to wait while she got the branch manager. A few minutes later, Malcolm Price came out of a glass office near the back. He was in his mid-50s, neatly dressed, with the measured manner of a man who had seen people panic over money before and knew better than to panic with them. "Mr. Ingram?" "Yes, sir." He offered a chair in his office. I sat down carefully, trying not to show how much it hurt. "I understand you have a large check to deposit. My grandfather gave it to me less than an hour ago." I slid the envelope across his desk. Malcolm put on reading glasses, opened it, and looked at the check without reacting at first. Then he typed something into his computer. The printer behind him hummed. A phone rang somewhere outside. Everything felt normal for about 10 seconds. Then his fingers stopped moving. He looked at the screen, then at the check, then back at the screen. His face lost color in a way I had only seen on people who had just received terrible news. "Is something wrong?" I asked. He did not answer right away. He stood, crossed to the office door, and closed it. Not slammed, not dramatic, just quiet and final. That scared me more. "Mr. Ingram," he said, sitting down again, "has this check left your possession since your grandfather gave it to you?" "No." "Did anyone take a photograph of it?" "I don't know." "Why?" He turned the monitor slightly, just enough for me to see the warning message, without exposing everything on the screen. The check number matched. The amount matched. My name matched. But according to the system, That same check had already been submitted through mobile deposit. I gave a short laugh because my mind refused to accept it. "That's impossible. I'm holding it." "I can see that," Malcolm said. His voice stayed careful. "That is why I need you to listen closely." He explained that a mobile deposit image had come in earlier that evening. It was flagged because several security checks failed. The account receiving the funds was under my name, but it was tied to a business I had never opened. Ingram Residential Solutions. I stared at those words until they blurred. "I don't own a business by that name." "The application used your social security number," he said. "A copy of your driver's license, your full legal name. But the phone number and device information do not match your customer profile." My hand moved toward the envelope without me meaning to, Malcolm noticed. "Please don't touch the check again for now. Not because you did anything wrong, because it may be evidence." Evidence. That word settled over the room. Suddenly, Brenner's panic made a different kind of sense. He had not just wanted the money. He had wanted the original check, because the original check could prove the mobile deposit was fraud. The thing Grandpa had given me as a gift had become the one piece of paper Brenner needed gone. Malcolm picked up his office phone and called the bank's fraud department. His tone became firm, professional. He requested preservation of the mobile deposit image, device logs, account application, verification records, and lobby surveillance. He asked them to freeze the receiving account before any funds could move. Then he looked at me. "I'm asking you not to leave the building until law enforcement is contacted." I nodded. That was all I could manage. While he made another call, I sat there with my hands on my knees, trying to arrange the last few months in my head. Brenner borrowing my wallet once to compare insurance cards. Brenner offering to help Grandpa organize paperwork. Brenner telling me I should let him handle financial things because you're good with tools, not forms. At the time, each moment had seemed small. Now they lined up like boards in a fence. Malcolm came back with a bottle of water and set it in front of me. "I've worked fraud cases for a long time," he said. "People who are hiding something usually talk too much. You're trying to understand what happened. That's not the same thing." I did not know how badly I needed someone to say that until he did, because Brenner had trained the room to doubt me before I ever opened my mouth. A message lit up my phone. "Mom." I did not answer. Another message came in almost immediately. "Brenner says you're making a scene. What did you do?" I stared at those words while sitting in a bank office with a bruised stomach, a stolen identity, and a check my brother had tried to take by force. Sometimes the worst betrayal does not arrive as one loud blow. Sometimes it steals your name first, then waits for your own family to ask why you are upset. Malcolm's phone rang again. He listened, wrote something on a yellow legal pad, and then went still. When he hung up, he looked older than he had 10 minutes earlier. "Mr. Ingram," he said, "whoever did this did not start today." Before the police even arrived, my grandfather walked through the bank doors, and the look on his face told me he already feared the answer. Grandpa did not come in fast. He never moved that way, unless something was on fire. He walked through the bank doors with his shoulders square, his gray work jacket still buttoned, and his old cap in one hand. But the moment he saw me sitting in Malcolm Price's office, bent slightly forward with one arm across my stomach, his face changed. Not fear, worse than fear, recognition. He stepped into the office and looked at me the way he used to look at cracked foundation lines under a house. "Who did that to you?" he asked. I wanted to say I fell. I wanted to say it was nothing. Old habits rose up before the truth did. Protect the family. Keep it quiet. Do not make Grandpa choose. But the check was lying in a clear evidence sleeve on Malcolm's desk now, and my name had already been used to open an account I had never seen. There was no quiet left to protect. "Brenner," I said. Grandpa closed his eyes. He did not ask if I was sure. That was what scared me most. Detective Maribel Knox arrived about 20 minutes later with a uniformed officer. She was calm, direct, and not impressed by anybody's last name. She asked each of us to tell the story separately. No interruptions. No family explanations. No, he probably meant well. I appreciated that more than I expected. Malcolm showed her the fraud hold, the mobile deposit record, and the check image. When he enlarged it on the screen, the room got very still. The mobile image was not some fake check made in a back room. It was my check. The crease in the envelope matched. A tiny smear of ink near Grandpa's signature matched. Even the yellow dining room light had cast the same shadow across the corner. Detective Knox leaned closer. Who handled the envelopes before they were given out? Grandpa's mouth tightened. Brenner carried them from the kitchen. Nobody spoke for a few seconds. I saw it then. Brenner had known what was in that envelope before I did. He had photographed the check, sealed it back up, and waited for Grandpa to hand it to me in front of everyone. The scene in the study had not been jealousy boiling over. It had been a cleanup job. A message buzzed on my phone. "Mom again. Brenner says you attacked him. Call me before this goes too far." I showed it to Detective Knox without answering. She photographed the screen and said, "Do not delete anything." Grandpa read the message over my shoulder. His jaw worked once, like he was biting back words he had no use for yet. Then Detective Knox asked if I had signed anything for Grandpa in recent months. "No," I said. And then memory shifted. 8 months earlier, Mom had been cleaning out her storage unit, and Brenner had stopped by with a folder under his arm. He told me Grandpa needed updated emergency contacts after his minor surgery. A few signatures, nothing complicated. I had been carrying boxes. Mom was tired. Brenner sounded confident, like always. So I signed, where he pointed. The shame hit before the anger. "I signed some forms," I said. He told me they were medical access papers. Grandpa looked at the floor. "He gave me papers too," he said. "Said they were temporary financial help forms, just in case I had another hospital stay." Detective Knox did not scold either of us. She did not sigh, or give that look people give when they think you should have known better. She only said, "People sign documents every day because they trust family. Criminals depend on that trust." That sentence gave me back a little air. The bank kept the check secured, and Detective Knox advised us not to go back to the house alone. It was late by then, so Grandpa stayed with a neighbor he trusted, and I spent a short, restless night on my own couch with my phone face down on the coffee table. Every time it vibrated, I knew it was either Mom begging me to call or Brenner trying to shape the story before the facts caught up. The next morning, we met Detective Knox at Grandpa's house. Nothing looked disturbed. That was the strange part. The study was neat. The drawers were closed. The laptop sat where it always sat. The framed contractor license still hung above the desk. To anyone else, it would have looked untouched. Detective Knox put on gloves. "People who steal information usually don't make a mess," she said. "They take what helps them and leave the room looking normal." Inside the locked filing cabinet, most of Grandpa's records were still there. Property tax files, insurance statements, old warranties for appliances he no longer owned. But 6 bank statements were missing. Not a pile, not a random folder. 6 specific months. Then Detective Knox checked the email settings on Grandpa's laptop. I watched her expression sharpen as she found a forwarding rule. Any email containing words like bank, statement, transfer, verification, or security alert had been automatically sent to an address none of us recognized. Grandpa sat down in his desk chair. "I thought I was misplacing things," he said. That hurt more than anger would have, because Brenner had not only taken money, he had made an old man doubt his own mind. The most dangerous lies are not always loud. Sometimes they arrive as one missing page, one strange login, one little moment where you think, maybe I am getting forgetful. While we sorted through an older checkbook, Grandpa stopped on a carbon copy. Same payment, same amount, again and again. Northgate Residential Solutions. Grandpa stared at it. "I never hired them." Detective Knox circled the company name and searched the state business registry from her tablet. When the result came up, she turned the screen just enough for us to see. The registered owner was not a stranger. It was Brenner Voss. Seeing Brenner's name on that business registration did something strange to the room. Nobody shouted. Nobody slammed a drawer. Grandpa did not even stand up. The study just seemed to shrink around us, like the walls had moved in a few inches while we were all looking at the screen. Northgate Residential Solutions. Owner, Brenner Voss. Registered 18 months earlier. Detective Knox read the filing twice, then asked Grandpa if he had ever signed a contract with that company. "No," Grandpa said. "I would remember hiring my own grandson under a name like that." The monthly payments had been dressed up as home maintenance and senior property management. On paper, it looked neat. practical, even responsible. But Grandpa had not approved it, and I had been the one replacing porch boards, fixing the back steps, and changing light fixtures when his hands started bothering him. Brenner had charged him for work I had done for free. That thought sat in my chest heavier than the kick had. Later that morning, Detective Knox contacted Tamsin Vale. A civil attorney Avis Calder recommended once she heard what was happening. Tamsin came to Grandpa's kitchen table with a legal pad, a laptop, and the calm expression of someone who had seen families turn paperwork into weapons. She reviewed the bank copies Malcolm had sent over. Then she stopped on one document. "Calloway," she said, "I need you to look at this carefully." It was titled Caregiver Compensation Agreement. My name was on it, so was Grandpa's. According to that paper, I had been paid to assist Grandpa with household care, transportation, and financial organization. It also suggested I had access to his statements and check records as part of that arrangement. "I never got paid for helping him," I said. "I believe you," Tamsin answered, "but this signature appears to be yours." She turned the page around. It was. My own handwriting looked back at me like a witness. I could not silence. Then I remembered the storage unit. Mom had been tired that day, sorting through old lamps and Christmas boxes. Brenner had arrived with a folder, acting like he was doing everyone a favor. "Grandpa needs emergency contact updates," he had told me. "Medical access? Hospital stuff. Just sign where the tabs are." I was sweaty from carrying furniture. Mom was asking me to move a cedar chest. Brenner sounded certain. I signed without slowing down enough to read every page. Now that old careless moment had teeth. For a few minutes, I could barely hear the conversation around me. All I could see was how it might look from the outside. A divorced man with modest income, a large check, a signed agreement saying he had handled his grandfather's care and papers. Maybe people would not see a grandson who showed up. Maybe they would see the story Brenner had built for them. Grandpa must have seen my face change, because he reached across the table and tapped 2 fingers near my hand. "Stop that," he said. I looked at him. "Grandpa, I signed it." "You signed something because family told you it was safe." "That sounds like an excuse." "No," he said. "It sounds like trust, and trust is not the crime here." Tamsin nodded once, not softening the truth, but not letting shame run the room either. "People get trapped by documents every day," she said. "The question is not whether the signature is real. The question is what you were told, what pages were attached, and who benefited." That helped. Not enough to make me steady, enough to keep me seated. By early afternoon, Detective Knox stepped outside to make calls, and Tamsin took copies of everything. Grandpa went into the hall to speak with his neighbor. I found myself alone in the kitchen with my phone in my hand. I opened a message to Detective Knox. "I think we should slow this down." I stared at it. What I really meant was, I do not want Grandpa dragged through court. I do not want Mom crying into the phone. I do not want every cousin in Shelby County deciding I broke the family because I would not hand Brenner a check with my name on it. My thumb hovered over send. Then movement outside the kitchen window caught my attention. Noah Whitlock, my 19-year-old cousin, was carrying cardboard boxes from Grandpa's garage to the driveway. He was thin, quiet, the kind of young man adults forgot was listening. Brenner had told him the week before to make himself useful if he wanted people to take him seriously. I stepped out onto the back porch. "Noah, who asked you to move those?" He shrugged. "Brenner said Grandpa wanted it done." "Grandpa did not mention it." Noah looked embarrassed. "It's fine. I don't argue anymore. It's easier." That sentence hit me in a place I did not expect. I heard myself at 19, then 25, then 35. I went back inside and deleted the message. A little while later, Grandpa called me to the garage. He opened a metal cabinet beside his old tools and pulled out a worn notebook with a cracked black cover. "This was never for court," he said. It was for me. Inside were dates: the night I stayed at the hospital, the morning I fixed the loose railing, the week his water heater failed, the appointment where I missed a paying job so he would not sit alone in a waiting room. Page after page, written in Grandpa's square, steady hand. I could not speak. Grandpa stood beside the workbench and said, "You stayed when it was inconvenient." For 35 years, I thought love only counted if somebody announced it in a room full of people. Grandpa had been writing it down quietly. I reached into my pocket and touched the navy handkerchief he had given me the day before. The fabric was soft from years of use. The truth did not need to be loud to survive. It only needed someone to keep it safe until the right moment. By the time Brenner started turning the family against me, I had stopped trying to make them believe my feelings and started saving every word he wrote. Brenner did not wait for the truth to reach the family. He got there first. By the next afternoon, my phone looked like a weather alert system. Texts from cousins, missed calls from aunts, a voicemail from a church friend of Mom's I had not spoken to in 6 years. Every message carried a slightly different version of the same story. I had pressured Grandpa. I had confused him. I had always been jealous of Brenner. I was dragging an old man through a legal mess because I wanted more than my share. One cousin wrote, "You know how your brother is, but police? Really?" Another said, "Maybe just split it and move on. Peace is worth more than money." Not one person asked why I had left my own birthday party holding my stomach. That told me something. Brenner had not just stolen my name. He was trying to steal the room before I walked into it. I sat at my small apartment table with my phone, a legal pad, and a cup of coffee gone cold. Tamsin Vale had given me simple instructions. Do not argue in the family chat. Do not explain privately. Do not threaten anyone. Save everything. So I did. Screenshots, voicemails, timestamps, names. It felt strange at first, like I was being cold. Then I remembered the study door locking behind me, and I kept saving. Mom called around 6. I let it ring twice before answering because some old part of me still wanted to sound normal. "Calloway," she said, already crying. "What is happening to this family?" I closed my eyes. "What did Brenner tell you?" "He said you're making Grandpa think he stole from him. He said you went to the bank because you wanted to freeze him out before anyone could talk sense into you." "Did he tell you he kicked me?" Silence. Then, softer. "He said you shoved him first." I stared at the scratches on my kitchen table. "Mom, did you ask him why the bank found an account in my name?" "He said it was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding does not need my social security number." She started crying harder. "Can't you just let this go?" There it was, the family prayer. Let it go. I had heard it when Brenner borrowed money and forgot to pay it back. I heard it when he humiliated me after my divorce. I heard it when Mom said, "He has pressure you don't understand." I kept my voice quiet. I've let things go for 20 years. This is what it became. I just want my family back. We lost our family long before I walked into that bank. She did not answer. I ended the call before she could ask me to be reasonable one more time. That evening, I opened a blank message to Detective Knox. For a few minutes, I honestly considered asking to slow everything down. Grandpa was tired. Mom was breaking. Every relative suddenly had an opinion, and none of them had the facts. Then I read the apology draft I had written to the family chat. "I am sorry this has gotten so painful." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I finally saw what it was. An apology Brenner could frame. I deleted it. The next morning, I met Detective Maribel Knox and Tamsin at Tamsin's office. Grandpa came with me. He carried black coffee in a paper cup and handed it over like it was a tool. "You don't owe anyone panic," he said. Those words did more for me than a whole speech would have. Detective Knox laid a recorder on the table and explained the plan. Tennessee law allowed the call with proper handling, but she still walked me through every step like I was a person, not a prop. "We are not trying to trap him into saying something false," she said. "We are giving him room to explain what he already knows." My mouth felt dry. "So I call him. You ask what he wants. You do not accuse. You do not argue." Tamsin added, "Let silence work. People like Brenner hate silence. They fill it." I dialed. He answered on the first ring. "Finally," he said, "do you still have the original check?" Grandpa looked down at the table. Detective Knox lifted one finger, reminding me to stay calm. "Yes," I said. "Bring it to me, right now." "What exactly am I fixing, Brenner?" A pause. Then he lowered his voice. "You are fixing the mess you made by running to the bank. I didn't open that account. Don't play simple with me. What account? The one that goes away when I have the original check. Nobody in the room moved. I let the silence sit. Brenner kept talking. The paperwork can disappear. The deposit issue can disappear. You hand it over, and I make sure Grandpa doesn't have to know how much you signed. My hand tightened around the phone. Why did you use my name? Because yours was clean, he snapped. And because nobody ever believes you over me. The room went so quiet I could hear the air conditioner click on. That sentence should have crushed me. Instead, it explained everything. My problem had never been that I lacked value. My problem was that I had been trained to ask the wrong people to confirm it. Detective Knox stopped the recording and closed her notebook. This investigation just became much bigger, she said. I looked out the office window while she spoke to Tamsin. A dark SUV rolled slowly past the front of the building, Brenner's SUV. He was not trying to win an argument anymore. He was watching. I thought the recorded call was finally turning the tide. I had no idea Brenner's most dangerous move was still waiting for me. The morning after the recorded call, I expected Detective Knox to say we had enough. Instead, she sat across from me in Tamsin Vale's conference room and said, "It helps. It does not finish it." That was when I learned something about financial crimes. They do not collapse because one guilty person says one careless sentence. They collapse when the paper, the dates, the accounts, the devices, and the witnesses all point in the same direction. Brenner knows he slipped, Tamsin said. That makes him dangerous. She was right. By noon, more relatives had started texting. One uncle wrote that families survive by forgiving. A cousin said I should divide the money before Grandpa's health suffered. Another message said, Brenner is trying to protect everybody. You always take things personally. I saved every word. Not because it did not hurt. It did. But my silence had changed. It was no longer surrender. It was discipline. Detective Knox laid out the plan slowly. Brenner still believed the original check was in my hands. The real check was secured at the bank. So Tamsin prepared a color copy and placed it inside an identical envelope. The meeting would happen in her office. Orson would be there. So would Knox, close enough to intervene, but quiet enough to let Brenner talk. Before we left Grandpa's house, I touched the navy handkerchief in my pocket. You always get nervous when people finally notice you. This time, I was nervous because I wanted to be noticed for the right reason. Brenner arrived at 3 o'clock in a dark suit, carrying a leather folder like he had come to close a sale. He did not sit at first. I want this settled, he said. No more police drama. No more embarrassing Grandpa. Orson looked at him. You embarrassed yourself. Brenner's face tightened, but he recovered fast. He opened the folder and spread papers across the table. There were copies of authorizations, payment agreements, and care records with my signature and Grandpa's. At a glance, they looked real. That was the frightening part. Lies do not need to be perfect. They only need to survive the first look. Tamsin leaned over them. This notary seal is from Fayette County, she said. But the document says it was signed in Germantown. Brenner shrugged. People travel. This font changes halfway down the page. Printer issue. The paper watermark is from a batch manufactured after the signing date. For the first time, he did not answer quickly. I looked at him and understood. He had not only stolen money, he had built an entire life where I was the thief and he was the rescuer. Brenner turned to me. Give me the original check, and these papers disappear. What about my identity? He said nothing. What about Grandpa's missing statements? Still nothing. What about the loan application tied to his house? His eyes flicked toward Orson. I was going to pay it back. Orson's voice was low. With what? Brenner snapped before he could stop himself. With the check that should have been mine. The room went silent. Then he grabbed the envelope from the table and tore it open. The photocopy slid out. For 1 second, Brenner looked like a man who had stepped onto a floor that was not there. Detective Knox moved toward the door, but Brenner shoved past a side exit and was gone before the officer in the hall could block him. He left the folder behind. That night, someone broke into Grandpa's house. Nothing obvious was taken except old records and the laptop from the study. But Knox had already arranged extra cameras after Brenner's SUV appeared outside Tamsin's office. One of those cameras caught his face when his hood slipped near the garage light. At 2 in the morning, my truck alarm screamed outside my apartment. I ran down to find patrol lights washing over the parking lot. An officer had already opened the door with gloves on. Inside were blank checks from Grandpa's missing checkbook, forged papers, and a credit card opened in my name. Detective Knox arrived minutes later, looked inside, and said, "He was trying to make you carry it." That was the moment I finally understood. Brenner never wanted only the money. He wanted my name, my credit, my silence, and then my blame. I stood beside my truck while the police photographed everything, and something settled in me. I would never again confuse protecting my family with protecting the person destroying it. Before sunrise, Knox received approval for search warrants on Brenner's apartment, storage unit, devices, business records, and financial accounts. She looked at me through the flashing lights. "We're finally going to see how big this really is." By sunrise, the investigators knew something I did not. My brother had not just stolen from our grandfather. He had been planning for years to leave every one of his crimes in my name. By Sunday morning, I had stopped expecting one clean answer. Fraud did not work that way. It came in layers, one fake form, one missing statement, one friendly favor that turned out to be a trap. Detective Knox called us into her office before Grandpa's birthday luncheon. Orson sat beside me with both hands resting on his cane, quiet but alert. Tamsin stood near the window with a folder pressed against her side. Knox laid out what the search warrants had uncovered: copies of my driver's license, old photographs of my social security card, counterfeit notary stamps, bank statements missing from Grandpa's cabinet, hard drives with altered documents. Then she showed us one page from Brenner's own spreadsheet. Beside my name, he had written, "Clean credit. Feels guilty easily. Mother can pressure him." I stared at that sentence until the words stopped looking like words. He had not seen me as a brother. He had seen me as a soft place to hide his crimes. Grandpa read it once, then asked for a copy. Knox could not give him everything, but she allowed him to show that page to Mom under supervision. We drove back to Grandpa's house before noon. Mom was already there, standing in the kitchen like she had aged overnight. When Grandpa placed the page in front of her, she read it 3 times. Then she played a voicemail Brenner had left her. His voice filled the kitchen. "Mom, listen carefully. If anyone asks, you remember seeing Calloway with Grandpa's checkbook months ago. You got confused before, but now you remember. You understand? This family needs you." Mom covered her mouth. For once, she was not crying because Brenner was in trouble. She was crying because she finally understood he had put a script in her hand and called it love. Grandpa refused to cancel the luncheon. "If I've spent years hiding the truth to keep this family together," he said, "maybe that's why it kept falling apart." By 1 o'clock, relatives were moving through the house with covered dishes and nervous eyes. No one knew where to stand. Grandpa asked everyone to gather in the dining room. He did not accuse. He stated facts. A financial investigation was underway. Evidence had been preserved. Nobody was to pressure witnesses or destroy records. Some people looked at me, then looked away. I did not chase their approval. The front door opened before anyone could respond. Brenner walked in. He looked tired, unshaven, but still carried himself like the room belonged to him. "Well," he said, "I see Calloway finally got his audience." Mom flinched. Brenner put a folder on the table. "Before everybody turns Grandpa against me, maybe you should see what Calloway had him sign." The papers spread out like poison. Property transfers, care agreements, authorizations, my name, Grandpa's name. At first glance, they looked convincing enough to frighten people. Aunt Avis whispered, "Lord have mercy." I had planned to play the recording right away. Then I remembered Knox's advice. "Let the documents speak first," I said. "Let's start with the originals." Brenner's eyes cut to me. Detective Knox stepped forward. Tamsin joined her. They examined page dates, notary seals, printer marks, metadata from the files Brenner had brought. One paper claimed to be signed before that batch had even been manufactured. Another had a Fayette County seal on a document supposedly notarized in Germantown. The lie began to fall apart, not with shouting, but with details. Grandpa reached into his pocket and set his old house keys on the table. "I gave you access because you were family," he said to Brenner. "I never gave you ownership." No one moved. I touched the navy handkerchief in my pocket. I did not pull it out. I only needed to know it was there. Then Knox played the call. Brenner's voice came through clear. Because yours was clean. A few seconds later, nobody ever believes you over me. That silence was different from all the others. It had weight. It had witnesses. Brenner lunged toward my phone on the table, but Grandpa stepped between us. Brenner shoved past him, and officers waiting near the hallway moved in before he could reach me. Even as they restrained him, he kept talking. You ruined this family. I looked at him and felt no need to raise my voice. No, I said. I stopped helping you ruin it. When they took him outside, nobody followed. Not Mom, not the uncles, not the cousins who had told me to split the money and move on. The patrol car pulled away, and the house stayed quiet behind it. For years, silence had felt like punishment. That afternoon, it felt like room to breathe. Justice did not begin when my brother was arrested. It began the day I stopped believing peace required my silence. After Brenner was taken away, people expected relief to arrive all at once. It did not. Real justice moved slowly. It came in phone calls, interviews, bank forms, court notices, fraud affidavits, insurance letters, and credit bureau disputes. For a while, every envelope in my mailbox made my chest tighten before I even opened it. Detective Knox kept following the trail. What started with one check became more than $200,000 in fraud, attempted theft, forged documents, identity theft, elder financial exploitation, and loan applications tied to property Brenner did not own. There were device records, bank logs, surveillance clips, altered files from his hard drives. The controlled call, and enough signatures, stamps, and fake authorizations to show a pattern no apology could explain away. Brenner accepted a plea agreement before trial. I think part of him still believed a courtroom would work like our family. Smile at the right person, blame me with enough confidence, count on Mom to soften the edges. But judges do not operate like mothers trying to keep Thanksgiving dinner peaceful. At sentencing, I sat beside Grandpa in Shelby County Court. Mom sat behind us. She looked small, not weak, just stripped of all the stories she had used to survive. Brenner was allowed to speak. He said he was sorry. For one brief second, I wanted to believe him. I wanted that because it would have made everything cleaner, simpler, easier to store away. Then he added, this never would have happened if Grandpa had divided everything fairly. And there it was. Not remorse, a negotiation. When it was my turn, I did not ask the judge to be harsher. I had no speech about revenge. I only told the truth as plainly as I could. The greatest thing my brother stole was not money, I said. It was trust. He studied the people who loved him. He learned which wounds made us easy to move. I spent most of my life believing sacrifice was the same thing as love. I know now it was not. It was permission. The courtroom stayed quiet. Brenner looked down. Not at me. Not at Grandpa. Down at the table, like even then he was searching for a way out that no longer existed. The court sentenced him to state prison, ordered restitution, and barred him from contacting me or Grandpa, except through attorneys. It did not restore everything. No court order can hand you back the version of family you thought you had, but it drew a line. And sometimes, a line is the first honest thing a family gets. Afterward, Mom started counseling. She did not ask me to forget. She did not tell me blood was thicker than paperwork. She did not say, but he is your brother, without stopping herself halfway through. Sometimes, she still began there. Then she would close her eyes and start again. That was not a perfect repair. It was awkward, slow, uneven. But it was the first time I had seen her choose truth over comfort. Grandpa recovered part of what Brenner took through seized accounts, insurance, and restitution. More important than the money, he stopped apologizing for being fooled. One afternoon, while we sat in his garage with the door open, he said, being deceived does not mean you were foolish. It means somebody abused your trust. I needed that sentence almost as much as he did. When the investigation finally released the original check from evidence, the bank reissued Grandpa's gift as a certified cashier's check. Grandpa offered to add more because of what I had been through. I told him no. The $100,000 had never been payment for suffering. It was recognition. I wanted it to stay clean. 6 months later, I signed papers on a small workshop in Germantown. Nothing fancy. 2 workbenches, cracked concrete, good good light in the front windows, and enough room for old furniture to become useful again. The first thing I framed was not the check. It was a photograph of Grandpa and me hanging the sign outside. He held one end of the carpenter's level, I held the other. The navy handkerchief was tucked in my shirt pocket, barely visible unless you knew to look. A customer noticed it one day while I was sanding an oak table. "Family heirloom?" she asked. I smiled. "Something better," I said. It reminds me that one person's faith can outlast another person's betrayal. Nearly a year after sentencing, Brenner sent a letter through his attorney. He wrote that prison had changed him. Near the end, he asked whether I would speak to Grandpa about restoring part of his inheritance. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I did not answer. Not because I hated him, because boundaries do not need an audience to be real. On my 36th birthday, Grandpa handed me another envelope. For half a second, my body remembered everything before my mind could calm it. Grandpa noticed. "It is only a card," he said. Inside, in his square handwriting, he had written, "The finest thing you built was not this workshop. It was a life no one can control anymore." I set that card beside the navy handkerchief in my office. I used to measure love by how much pain I could endure without complaining. Now I measure it by the peace I refuse to surrender. If someone you loved betrayed your trust that deeply, would forgiveness mean giving them another chance? Or would it mean letting go of the anger while keeping the door closed? I lost the brother I thought I had, but I found the man I was always meant to become.